Let's get sweaty.
Hey guys, welcome to a Shenmue Dojo video. Today is the 25th anniversary of Shenmue's release in Japan. There's been loads of articles floating around the internet from many Japanese sites, more than Western sites, I guess, talking about the anniversary, talking about the game, the history, and all sorts of things around it. Now, one of those particular outlets is Famitsu. Now, Famitsu have been very, very good towards Shenmue for a long, long period of time. And in an article released overnight, they've got several of the original programming team back together. So you've got project directors, you've got programmers, you've got Kenji Miyawaki, who did the artwork for Shenmue. I think there's 7 or 8 of them get together and they reminisce about their time working on the Shenmue project. They talk about their development stories, not sleeping very much, and other bits and pieces across the development cycle of Shenmue, as well as talking a little bit about the future. Maybe RGG picking something up, they'd like it. Whether it happened or not is another question. But within this, there was an interesting point made around conversions. Now, I did a video 6 to 8 months ago now talking about the possibility of whether the Dreamcast version of Shenmue 1, Shenmue 2 could have gone on to the PlayStation 2. Within this interview, and the link is in the description below, very excitingly, they have confirmed that actually a PlayStation 2 version of Shenmue 1 did exist internally at SEGA. Now, whether this will ever see the light of day, I do not know. But the fact that this thing even existed just proves that it could have been done. I don't know what state it was in, but again, that is awesome. And they also talk about a little bit about Shenmue 1 on the Xbox, and that there were some challenges around that release ever happening. But let me show you the interview itself while I talk through some bits and pieces here. So here we are, this is the interview itself. The link is in the YouTube description below if you want to have a look at it. And it is massive and it's got some absolute nuggets in here. One thing I will caveat is it's done via machine translation. So do hang on just in case there's any mistranslations in here. Because as ever with machines, you never quite know. But anyway, Hirai comes back and says, after they talk about sort of things they were implemented 25 years ago, that he actually made a PlayStation 2 version of Chapter 1 once. Never released, but internally there was a version that ran on PlayStation 2, and also an Xbox version, but obviously only Shenmue 2 released in North America and in Europe. So it was never made it to release, but it was in fact ported. And then he also said he had to fix the source code. It was written in assembler. It was very difficult to then convert it back to C, which I'm guessing what the PlayStation 2 and Xbox ran on. And I know the Xbox was closer in terms of Shenmue 2's port, because that was written, I think, in C on Dreamcast rather than more inherently linked to the Dreamcast hardware. But someone who's far more technical than me can tell me all about that. And then he talks about here the Xbox version, that it was not released due to the rights issues, not the technical issues. I'll pick up on that in a minute, with like Timex and Coca-Cola, and the contract was only for the Dreamcast version. And was the PlayStation 2 version actually playable? Said it worked with changed graphics system, but it was working and playable. And they talk a little bit about here the shaders, that the PlayStation 2 had to be programmed to support the shaders. The GPUs are obviously very, very different, so they redesigned it and installed them. From a game perspective, you want to release it, you could have done it. Now that in itself, obviously it would have to go through bug testing, everything else, is absolutely mental. The fact that they had a running, functioning version of Shenmue on the PlayStation 2 is amazing news. Now I'd love to see this. I'd love to see if it still exists. Sega, lost things over the years. I hope they haven't lost this as well. But I would put this on the sort of almost Sega Saturn version level of I must see this thing, because how things could have been ever so different had Shenmue come out on the PlayStation as well as the Xbox at the time. So there you have that side of things. It was very much confirmed. It was going to happen. It was there internally, and then obviously things transpired that it didn't happen. But the fact it was playable is absolutely madness in itself. Touching on the Xbox version a little bit here. Now this is where I struggle a little bit. They talk about the licensing issues. Now obviously in Japan you had the Coca-Cola vending machines, or you had the Timex watch, which came across to the Western releases anyway. And they were talking about the licensing issues there. Now we found obviously in 2018 that a lot of those licenses were taken out for the HD re-releases on the PlayStation, the Xbox and the PC. So why couldn't they have just done that back then? I don't know. Whether there was an appetite to do it, whether there was other internal wranglings potentially around an Xbox version of Shenmue 1. For me, I know they had the DVD with Shenmue 2, but having both games on that platform would have just helped things. Would have helped things massively. But I don't think that it would have helped as much as having Shenmue 1, Shenmue 2 on PlayStation 2. And it's insane, as I say, I'm going to keep saying this, the fact they actually had a version running internally, it beggars belief. And thinking about sort of a parallel timeline here, how different could it have been had Shenmue come out on PlayStation 2, been successful? We'd probably have had things finished by now. It's insane how that could have happened. But anyway, guys, I wanted to touch on that as part of the 25th anniversary because for me, that is a massive, massive revelation here. We've theorised around a PlayStation version for a number of years, and there's been back and forth of whether it was even technically possible. Well, people who worked on the project are saying not only was it possible, it was working. So there we are, guys. That is a fantastic nugget of news for the Shenmue community. I'd love to dig into some of that more over the coming months, weeks, years, whatever you want to see. Maybe just ever so slightly we'll see a release of that potentially, because you know all these projects do come out in time. Never ever know. Now, before I finish the video, I am going to make a little note that Sega Dreamcast Info, Lauren over there, has a stream going at 8 PM UK time, 9 PM Europe time, looking at the Tree of Life project. Now, I'm not saying it's Shenmue related because I know absolutely sod all about it. I know nothing about it. But it seems very interesting that something like that, a stream with like what seems to be quite a lot of revelations, in theory, potentially, is happening on the day of the 25th anniversary of the Shenmue release in Japan. So I'm just putting that seed there for everybody. I'll pop the link to that in the description below as well, if you want to check that out. That's 8 PM UK time, 9 PM in Europe, 3 PM Eastern time, if I am correct in my memory of how those work, which would be also midday Pacific, which oddly is very similar to the tweetathon stuff. There we go. So check that out, the description's below if you want to pick that up. As ever, guys, thank you for dropping in on the content. It's always appreciated seeing everybody engaging with the content. What do you think about this PS2 version? I think it, again, how things could have been so different, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe in the usual places. £2 a month if you become a member, get all the videos ahead of time, and I will be back with a stream with James later on today and more videos in the not too distant future. But for now, guys, take care, have a good one.